Alright, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Joanne is the possum, and there is an absurd amount of proof for it that's barely even a theory. But upon hearing that, you might have a bit of a gut reaction. Either you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, or you might be wondering, wait, how are they both in the VHS and out and about? Why would she say her own name? What are you talking about? And to that I say, sit down, grab a Hamlin-approved cup of cocoa, and jam that VHS into the tape recorder, my friend, because I have answers to everything. But first, let's settle down for a bit and talk about the main evidence before we get to the answers to those two other questions I just brought up, because otherwise, none of this will make any sense in the first place. So just kick back and let's start things slow. For those of you who haven't seen Man of the Adventure 2 yet, I strongly advise either playing it or watching a playthrough first, because this theory is going to reference several spoilers. But just to give a quick recap to those who need it, Man of the Adventure follows Riley as we start investigating the show's tapes after our Aunt Kate died and asked us to in her will, in which we discover that Amanda was really someone else, Rebecca Colton, who upon the show being absorbed into Hamlin Entertainment, was put into the tapes and sealed into them by a demon with the goal of something, we're not quite sure yet. But we know that in the process, children all around the globe would become so entrenched with the show that they disappear entirely, never to be seen again. In this new game, though, we're given further means to investigate, as the masked figure that ended the last game brings us to the Kensdale Library, where we have access to more tapes and the addition of a new fiendish little rascal, the Possum, who will stop at nothing to get in Amanda's way and scrounge around, steal and break whatever they can get their hands on. At the very end of the game, the masked figure reveals themselves to be Joanne, whose brother went missing thanks to the tapes, and whom Aunt Kate thought died right before her own passing. From there, Joanne dies in one of two gruesome deaths, depending on the endings. We head down to a bunker, and cut to black, roll the credits. Although a little underwhelming in that created far more questions than answers, main of which being how they kept teasing that something happened to Wooly in the promotional material, only for him to seemingly return in the final game with very little explanation, the main thing people have been talking about since the game's demo is, what's up with that possum? Who are they? Why are they only here now? What do they have to do with Hamlin? But luckily for us, we have a lot of hints as to who that is. And so let's talk about why Joanne is the culprit that we're looking for. The main thing that first tipped me off to the possum being Joanne is of course the story correlation. Possums of course are mainly known by the fact that when predators are nearby they can fake being dead, and this alone can be pretty easily paralleled to the fact that Joanne seemingly faked her death, as in Kate's cassette in the true ending, we hear that Aunt Kate thought Joanne had died and that it was her fault. However, moments later, Joanne reveals herself as being the person under the mask, alive and well. Well, till moments later, of course. So Joanne being a possum in the tapes would kind of make sense, because like a possum, she faked her death to escape unscathed from Hamlin. Though that's not the only proof we have. Every time we see the possum, they're primarily seen scrounging around, taking and breaking whatever they can. And during each of these moments, Amanda puts a strong emphasis on how annoying they are and how they need your help getting rid of them. Between each of these tapes, Joanne is calling us up on the walkie-talkie, talking about a creature lurking around the building, likely the man demon. Basically, Amanda is literally asking you to get rid of her. Especially given that from what we see in the When You're Feeling Bad tape, the man demon listens to Amanda's wants and needs and acts basically as her guard dog. So if Joanne and the possum are linked in some way and Amanda's constantly complaining about and getting upset by the possum, then it makes sense for the demon to go after Joanne outside. Plus, if they really are the same person, I imagine demon would be able to tell through aura or soul or whatever, especially if they're the one who forced Joanne in the tapes later on down the line, which I will talk about in more detail later. Trust me, put a pin in it, we'll be right back. At the treasure hunt tape, no matter what you do, Amanda will get angry at you and demand that you bring something good or else the man demon will kill you. Though this only happens once Amanda digs up the treasure and realizes it's not as cool as she had been hyping it up to be. However, before she finds the treasure, the possum comes to try and break her shovel. This is a little interesting given that if they're supposed to be the swiper stand-in, it'd make a lot more sense for the possum to try and steal the treasure, or at least try to dig it up first with the shovel that they just stole. You know, like Swiper does. However, here they explicitly destroy the shovel, ensuring that neither of them can get the treasure. The possum is trying to stop Amanda from digging because if she digs, she will discover that's not as cool as she thought it'd be, get mad, and then kill whoever's watching. After all, I doubt every person at home has a woolly doll in their household within arm's reach. This could show that the possum was somebody that already has some amount of knowledge about the tapes, and how certain ones end. The possum is trying to protect the people who watch the tapes by trying to stop things from happening and ensure that the anger is on them rather than the audience, seeing as they're already in the tapes. This theory makes even more sense when you look at some of the other Possum moments. A lot of what they do seems to be a last-ditch effort to prevent Amanda from finishing the episode, stealing coins so they can't afford the trip, trying to waste all the paint so they can't paint the birdhouse, ruining breakfast. But the biggest moment that makes this clear is in Good Night. If you wait out the timer on the nightlight scene forcing Amanda to sleep without one, Amanda will be scared and the possum will steal away Amanda's only comfort, the teddy bear standing guard. This in turn shows the audience some very not good things. Things that if a normal person had seen would probably cause them to not watch anymore, or if they're a parent, to turn off the show and ban it in their household. Those don't seem like something Hamlin would want in their show, because they start to show the cracks of Amanda the Adventurer. Towards the end of the game, at Do You Feel Safe, we get a call from Joanne about a creature lurking around, the Amandemon, and says that she'll make her way around the building. Immediately after, when we boot up the tape, we see Amanda outside of a library. Given how Joanne says that she'll make her way around the building, that would mean that she should be right around the alleyway where Amanda goes, which also happens to be exactly where the possum pops out, sneaking around in the true ending version of the tape. This can be further proven by the fact Amanda calls out how the possum can't hear them, which isn't shown to be the case in other tapes, likely because it's somewhat mirroring real life here, mirroring where Joanne really is. The possum appears in the true ending version right as Joanne is talking with you about the Amandemon following her. Though of course, I've been avoiding it long enough. I'm sure the question you've been asking yourself since I've started talking about the end tape is, if Joanne is the possum, how is Joanne both in the tapes and here? Like, what are you saying, Spice? Shouldn't that mean that the possum can't be Joanne? I mean, Rebecca's in the hospital unconscious while simultaneously being Amanda, sure. Wouldn't that mean Joanne should at the very least be unconscious or dead in order for her to be put in the tapes? Well, here's the thing that challenges that. Throughout both games, when you get the tapes, you can infinitely replay them so you can complete puzzles without accidentally missing the answer or soft-locking yourself. And we know that the Amanda in these tapes are alive and sentient, but yet we're able to replay them infinitely without Amanda saying anything about it. This becomes far more noticeable here in Amanda 2, with scenes like the nightlight encounter in the goodbye tape, where you can play that scene over and over and Amanda doesn't act any differently. Same with other tapes, like the Patience tape. This is because to her, there was no other instance. Each tape is an instance of Amanda's consciousness, so whenever you replay those tapes, for the most part, you're replaying that moment in time, rewriting what she experiences of that moment in real time. The best way I can describe this is like an actual show. If you decide you're gonna watch, I don't know, The Amazing Digital Circus, spoilers for episode 3 by the way, say you're watching The Digital Circus and you watch the pilot episode with Kinger, then watch episode 3 where Pomni connects with Kinger and realizes he isn't as crazy as she thought and is given some amount of comfort from the fear she's been feeling this whole time. If you then decide to go back and watch, say, episode 2, just because you watched it in that order doesn't mean that the characters now know that information. That doesn't make it where Pomni now knows that about Kinger, because that episode you just watched before is still in the future for Pomni. The timeline order that you watched it in is different to the timeline order that the characters in universe are experiencing. In the case of Amanda the Adventurer, this is the same. We don't ever know the quote-unquote order in which these episodes are supposed to be, but to Amanda, it's far more linear. Amanda's timeline is separate to ours, meaning no matter what order we see them, some of them could take place earlier or later in time. This alone solves many of the problems people have mentioned about Amanda 2, such as where Wooly went, for example. We never really got much of an explanation of what happened to Wooly, and Amanda was being pretty ominous in the demo.
If you could find him.
But then they just reappear like nothing happened. But if we're watching the tapes in the wrong order of Amanda's timeline, it's highly possible that the tapes where we see Wooly are actually before he died in Amanda 1. This also explains many of the differences in how Amanda and Wooly act. Some of the tapes are earlier in the timeline when Amanda and Wooly were far more complacent and just went along with things in hopes of eventually being let out, while others are far more hostile and cries for help, like in the What's a Family tape from the first game. Point being that the tapes can take place in the future, the past, and anywhere in between. But if you can get sucked into those tapes, that puts into question one simple thing. What would happen if you were sucked into a tape that's earlier in the Amanda timeline later on? At the end of Amanda 2, we can see that Joanne is killed by the Man Demon for trying to destroy the tapes, or in the true ending, killed by Demon Wooly. Seeing as the Man Demon can come in and out of the TV seemingly at Amanda's will, it isn't too much of a stretch to assume that the Man Demon is the one that can pull people into the tapes, such as the children, or us in the Meatman ending of the first game, and likely Rebecca herself into Amanda, given she was the one being made to say all the demon names by Hamlin. So after Joanne was killed, there's a good chance that she too was pulled into the tapes. Although we don't know what tapes specifically, at the time of her death she was killed while she had a box full of tapes, and although we don't know what tapes she destroyed here, given they're all blank, whatever tape she was put in, assuming she is the possum, was probably the tape directly before Let's Plan a Trip. Although Amanda seems confused in the first possum encounter, she does act like she has no idea what the possum is. More just angry that it appeared, which doesn't make sense if this was the first time she's ever met the possum.
No, 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 go away! Get this weirdo out of here!
Her saying to get this weirdo out of here as a first line on seeing the possum kind of implies that they've seen it before, as they don't seem confused, though they do seem far more confused in Good Night, a tape later. There we see the possum seemingly pop into existence, and Amanda asks, "Who even are you?" Which could imply that this is the actual first appearance of the possum, or at the very least, Amanda's first encounter. Though this does strongly prove what I said earlier about the order of the tapes, because if we switch these two tapes around, it makes a lot more sense. The possum appears, she's like, "Who even are you?" And then the second time she's like, "Get this weirdo out of here," you know? It just makes way more sense that way, because this is the actual episode order. Hi, future me here. I have a few other interjections later in the video, but I wanted to pop in here really quick. Upon looking back at the footage, I'm fairly certain that the order is We Can Fix It, then Good Night, then Plan a Trip. The thing that makes me think this is that in We Can Fix It, the possum is treated more like a random obstacle of the episode, which is likely what Amanda would initially think they were, akin to other random animal characters we see, like the ones in the zoo, or Mr. Fox, or other such things. So basically, she opens the box where the possum first appears, then the possum appears in Good Night, which is when she starts asking who they are and how they got in here, as it would make much sense for a random possum to be in her bathroom, unlike earlier when it was in the trash episode, and then lastly, Plan a Trip, when they've become an official antagonist. And even better, the tape that Joanne destroys, we know just so happens to be We Can Fix It, which we can tell because this tape is the only one to have a bandage. I don't know why I didn't notice this earlier when I was looking, but yeah, We Can Fix It has a bandage, we see it in game. So yeah, that's when the possum first appeared, probably. Back to Past Me. At the very end of the game though, you may remember that the possum tries to say the name Joanne upon hearing Joanne talk through the walkie-talkie. Although this made a lot of people think this was Joanne's brother whom she was trying to find, that doesn't really match up with the behaviors earlier, and how they seem to indicate that the person inside is aware of how the tapes work in a slightly more advanced way than one of the many abducted children. Plus, why would he get a real body while everyone else is trapped as a building or a toilet? Joanne seemed to mention a lot about not being tricked by Hamlin anymore, which seems to indicate a deeper connection between Joanne and Hamlin. So if it was Joanne, it'd make a lot more sense that she'd get more important body within the tapes if she's really as involved as she says. But if what I've been saying this whole time about how the tapes work and Amanda time is true, then this is Joanne's future self. Joanne was killed by the monster put in the tapes, and thus to keep consistency, any future tapes include them as a character. If we're able to jump around the Amanda timeline by watching tapes that are earlier or later in the timeline, I don't see why it can't be the other way around too, where we can see tapes with trapped souls and objects or characters that haven't been collected yet. We know this can happen too, because we've already seen it in Amanda Adventurer 1. The butcher shop in all of its iterations has shown hanging meat with eyes, in which every piece of meat has eyes. Though in the Meatman ending, where we get trapped in the show too, we're hanging as one of these meats with eyes. But that shouldn't be possible. We saw that all of the meat had eyes, unless Amanda time is real and the tape was changed to show eyes there, because in the future those eyes are ours, just like with the possum and Joanne. Though this does bring into question another point. If Joanne really is the possum, then when they're trying to say Joanne here, they're likely trying to call out either to us or her past self to warn her. But here's a question. Why didn't the possum try to tell us who they were earlier? They look at the camera a lot every time we stop them. Couldn't they see that we're Riley and realize that you're past Riley and try to say something? Well, here's the thing. Possums have really bad eyesight. Yes, that's the argument I'm going with. Possums are nocturnal, but even then, they just generally have bad eyes. But due to being nocturnal, light makes it even harder to see than normal. Their light is our dark, basically. And in nearly every occurrence of the possum, it's in a bright room. Though even on the occasions where it's dark, they're often preoccupied with their mission to ruin the episode in hopes of saving the people who watch it. And it probably also doesn't help that around the TV, there's lots of lights brightening the area we're in. However, at the end scene, not only is it a super dark alleyway, but they only react and realize when they hear the walkie-talkie call from Joanne. If the possum is Joanne in the future, them not only hearing their own voice, but also that walkie-talkie blip would immediately tell them who's at the TV right now. And more importantly, what's about to happen. Remember, Riley's a silent protagonist. There would have been no indication that this was Riley up until they heard the walkie-talkie. Joanne, upon experiencing the suffering of being in the tapes, or the man-demon, or both, she's desperately trying to warn both us and her past self. Especially given that in both endings where we live, Joanne basically sacrifices themselves even though they could probably have feasibly came in with us to the bunker in the true end. She regrets sacrificing herself and is trying to warn us and herself. Post-production mate, just another thing to point out as proof that the possum isn't Joanne's brother that I just thought about while editing. So Joanne's brother was stolen years ago, right? From the evidence we have so far, it seems to be about 15 to 20 years ago. If you suddenly caught contact with someone for 15 to 20 years and then you heard their voice again, you probably wouldn't recognize it. Not just from memory in general, but also because her voice would have changed in that time. Within that amount of time, her voice would have become so much deeper with age. Heck, even if she wasn't young around the time he was kidnapped, take anyone's voice from 20 years ago and then another sample from today, and they'd sound like a completely different person if you couldn't see their face to fully recognize them. Plus, we have the distortion of a walkie-talkie being put over it. And when you consider that Joanne's brother was probably pretty young, if we look at Dora for reference, the usual audience for it is around 6 years old, there is no way that he'd have remembered 20 years down the line and put two and two together the moment she spoke. Also, another update that I've since learned and want to cover before the comments do. Recently, I learned that upon dying your first run, Amanda will force you to use the opposite light option you did last time, which may appear upon first glance to go against my whole idea of Amanda time. After all, I realized on the idea that, hey, Amanda can't remember each time you replay a tape, and here it appears to be remembering a choice you made last time you used the tape. But the key thing about Amanda remembering is that this is not caused by us replaying the tape at all. You'd think it should, given the way everything's worded, but you only get this encounter upon getting an ending where you die. In fact, like my point before, you can replay this tape infinitely and Amanda will repeat the same suggestion as if it was the first time. So Amanda can't tell when we replay a tape, but can tell when we die. But that of course leads to, what does Joanne do if you die? Well, given how she acts in the endings we see, chances are she'd just do the exact same thing as the bad ending. She'd destroy a tape and then die to the man demon. It's impossible to get the true ending on your first run because you need the golden piece from the second variant of the first tape in order to access the secret cave to get one of the secret lore tapes. And of course, you will need all of the secret tapes for the final ending, which means Joanne will always die before the final encounter with the possum where they say Joanne. So basically, Amanda isn't remembering the last time the player replayed the tape, they're remembering them from the last time they died. How? I have no clue. But this means it does not debunk Amanda time, because it's very clearly not done by replaying the tapes themselves, otherwise she would have said this exact same thing after repeating the original tape, before we died. This also means Amanda might be able to remember us across timelines, which makes things 10 times more confusing within canon. Why does it never get easier? Back to past me. And just for one last nail in the coffin of proof, again, at the end tape, Wooly says a particularly interesting line.
Why have you been letting this stranger us this whole time?
Now, this doesn't seem too odd until you realize that even if you only choose to stop the possum each and every time that it appears, Wooly will still say this line, treating it like we made the possum come here. But you know who we did bring here? Who we have been letting mess with them this whole time? The person that we'd been letting scrounge around in the back? Joanne. And in the true ending where this exact piece of dialogue is found, who kills her but Wooly, the same person who seconds earlier showed extreme discontent at that very stranger. But hey, that's a very overused joke. Though I do really like this theory. I'm very proud of it, and I hope you guys like it too. So, do you guys agree with me? Or actually, here's a more interesting one. If the possum's a person, then does that mean that silly Mr. Fox that was killed in the first game was also a person trapped in the tapes? Chew on that down below. Anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you guys around. Bye, everyone!